Welcome to Haunted Canada. Hi everyone, my name is Nadine, and welcome to episode 5 of Haunted Canada. On this episode, we're going to delve into 3 ghost stories. I have had so many requests for more ghost stories from across Canada, so this episode is for all of you. In this episode, we're going to venture to Regina, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Alberta, and Victoria, British Columbia. Drake Hall in Regina, Saskatchewan, was a concert hall and venue for the Conservatory of Music at the university. The building was named after Francis Drake, the former mayor of Regina. Drake not only built the hall as a gift to the university, but when he died in 1940, he laid in state and had his funeral in the very hall bearing his name. Drake was then buried in a grand mausoleum at the Regina Cemetery. Yet still to this day, it is widely believed that the ghost of Francis Drake is still roaming throughout the hallways of his building. Francis Nicholas Drake was born in 1863 in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. He spent the first 28 years of his life in the Maritimes working as a farmer, until he moved to Regina, making his fortune in real estate, land, and the meat business. His business ventures paid off, and Drake built the very first office building in Regina, and he also became the mayor and a member of parliament at different times. His business ventures paid off, and Drake built the very first office building in Regina. Today, the staff at the University of Regina believe it is the ghost of Francis Drake that is still wandering throughout the academic and musical hallways. Staff and students who have spent a lot of time in the Drake Hall over the years have reported seeing what is described as a pleasant-looking man, dressed in early 1920s attire, wandering about the hallways. While on other occasions, the apparition of Francis Drake is seen sitting in the exact same red velvet seat that he used to occupy in the hall when it was opened in 1929. After one young student had seen a man dressed in 1920s attire walking throughout the hallways in the Drake building, only to vanish right in front of her, she was left even more shocked and scared when just a few days later, she was looking at some old photos in that same hallway. When one particular photo caught her eye and she leaned in for a closer view and spotted the building's namesake, Francis Drake, in one of the historical photos dated 1929. The student just stood there, shocked. Staring at the picture, she realized that that was the same man that she had just seen a few days earlier vanish in front of her in that very same hallway. While on other occasions, musicians have reported that when they're in the hall rehearsing, that they'll often catch a glimpse of a man sitting in what is commonly referred to as the Drake seat. Many musicians just assume that it's somebody from the university sitting in to watch a rehearsal. Numerous musicians have recounted a very similar experience that when they're in the hall practicing, adjusting their instruments or sheets of music, that they will spot a man dressed in 1920s attire in the audience. Yet when they look back just a few moments later, that they'll often witness the apparition of the man vanish right in front of their eyes. To this day, it is widely believed on the University of Regina campus that it is the spirit of Francis Drake still visiting the building that bears his name. However, the spirit of Francis Drake might not be the only ghost that is seen wandering throughout the historic hallways. Drake Hall was also used as an air training center during World War II, and legend has it that back in the day, many of the young men would party pretty hard at the hall and would usually go up to the roof of the building. Yet it seems that one of these young men had a bit too much to drink one evening and fell off the roof to the ground to his death. It's believed that that young man's spirit is still seen wandering throughout Drake Hall dressed in a soldier's uniform. While in 1920, typhoid broke out at the University of Regina due to unpasteurized milk. The university converted the third floor of Drake Hall into a hospital and an isolation area for 68 students, 4 teachers, and 6 staff who had contracted typhoid. Sadly, 8 students died in the makeshift hospital, and many believe that their spirits are still seen on the 3rd floor. Employees who work on the 3rd floor of Drake Hall will often hear the sounds of someone moaning and calling out for help, while others have seen the apparition of young men and women in white hospital gowns, looking very sickly and gaunt, wandering throughout the 3rd floor. It is believed to be the spirits of those 8 students who died of typhoid in the makeshift hospital of Drake Hall. Today, Drake Hall may be viewed as an academic institution and a place of higher learning, yet it cannot escape its haunted and tragic past, as the spirits of those connected to Drake Hall are still seen wandering throughout its hallways, still to this day. La Boheme is a former restaurant and boutique hotel in the historic Highlands area of Edmonton, Alberta. It was many locals' top choice for a romantic dinner and an evening out, while it was also a favorite spot for NHL players. Back in the 80s, many of the Edmonton Oilers, including the great one, Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier, would often go to La Boheme after a game to celebrate a win or commiserate a loss in the private cellar in the basement. The former boutique hotel and restaurant is haunted by the murdered wife of a former owner who was killed in a jealous rage in one of the building's bedrooms on the top floor, before being dragged to the basement and cremated in the furnace. Over the years, employees and guests have reported flickering lights, sheets being tugged off the beds in the middle of the night, and the sounds of a body being dragged down the staircase and hearing the bang, bang, bang sound on the stairs. La Boheme used to be in the Gibbert Block, which is a quaint building in the Highlands area. Sadly, the restaurant closed several years ago. However, the Gibbert Block is still a recognizable presence in the community and one of the city's most legendary haunted buildings. Several years ago, I was asked by Edmonton Tourism to accompany a writer around the city of Edmonton, highlighting some of Edmonton's most haunted locations, and La Boheme was at the top of my list. One of the co-owners at the time, Michael, welcomed the opportunity to talk about the building's spooky past and took us on a private tour. When I told Michael and the writer about the history of La Boheme and the murder of the woman that was killed by her husband and how she had been dragged down the stairs, Michael was quickly to confirm that this is what he knew as well. Michael also added that no one knows for sure what exactly happened, but guests who have woken up late at night by creaking sounds and the repeated thud, thud, thud like something is being hauled down the stairs, but on turning on the lights in the staircase, it's empty. That's when Michael took us down to the basement. I was able to add that the legend and lore of La Boheme speaks to the murdered woman being dragged down to the basement by her husband and her body being dismembered as she was thrown into the furnace to be disposed of. It was then the highlight of our visit when the co-owner gave us a private viewing of the bedroom where it's believed that the murder that happened, and then we descended down to the basement to see the old furnace. It was a small furnace room that even gave me the creeps. I remember my chest getting heavy and finding it hard to breathe a few times. When this would happen, I would actually step out of the furnace room for just a few moments to catch my breath. I have been in a lot of spooky and really creepy places over the years, but I have to say that being in that furnace room at La Boheme was one of my most spookiest experiences to date. Former staff would also talk about objects mysteriously falling off shelves, lights going on and off, and hearing the bangs also on the staircase. And while La Boheme is no longer in the Gibbert block, it is believed that the ghosts still remain behind where a tragic and horrific murder took place so many years ago. The Haunted Tale of Craigdarroch Castle. In the heart of Victoria, British Columbia, stands the hauntingly beautiful Craigdarroch Castle. This imposing mansion, built by the coal mining millionaire Robert Dunsmuir in the 1890s, eludes an air of mystery and intrigue that has captured the imagination of locals and visitors alike. Legend has it that the castle is the home of a host of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomenon. Many have reported hearing the eerie strains of a piano playing a haunting melody, even though there is no piano to be found within the castle walls. Visitors have spoken of a woman in white, believed to be that of Joan Dunsmuir, the wife of the castle's first owner. She's often seen standing at the windows or gliding down the staircase in a ball gown. The castle's ballroom has become a hotbed of paranormal activity, with sightings of a woman in white and the sounds of children crying echoing through the hallways. Some have even claimed to see a little girl running throughout the house, accompanied by a maid, and the strange spectral image of a woman's feet descending the staircase. Staff and visitors have reported seeing the apparitions of the Dunsmuir family, who are said to haunt the castle still to this day. the tragic history of the Dunsmuir family is marked by untimely deaths and bitter rivalries, and it has left a mysterious mark on the Craigdarroch castle. Whispers of family feuds, unfulfilled ambitions, and lost loves linger within its ornate walls, giving rise to whispers of spectral sightings and inexplicable occurrences. So, just exactly who were the Dunsmuir family? Let's start with the castle's original visionary, Robert Dunsmuir. Robert was born in Hulford, Scotland, and came from a family of entrepreneurs. Robert's father, James Dunsmuir, was in the coal business in his native Ayrshire, Scotland. The grandfather bought out local competitors in the day before the arrival of the railway, allowing him to increase prices, which led to making him a very wealthy man. In 1832, in the midst of the family's prosperity, Robert's mother, father, grandmother, and two of his three sisters sadly died within days of each other in the cholera epidemic which was sweeping the area at the time. During the year 1831, cholera caused the deaths of nearly 22,000 people in England and Wales, and it hit Scotland with an outbreak in 1832, with just under 10,000 people dying. Cholera was caused by contaminated water. This bacterial disease spread via infected water supplies, and at the time it had made its way from Russia to China and then on to Britain. It wasn't long before cases of the infection were reported in Scotland, with the first reported cases of cholera reported in Scotland on December 23, 1831. 3 years later, Robert's grandfather, James Dunsmuir, died a relatively wealthy man, leaving a third of his estate in trust to his orphaned grandchildren. Robert Dunsmuir was schooled locally at the Craigdarroch Academy and then at the Paisley Mercantile and Mechanical School, a training helpful in the coal business. And Robert then eventually worked in the local coal mines under his uncle, Boyd Gilmore. On September 11th, 1847, at the age of just 22, Robert Dunsmuir married 19-year-old Joan White. 8 days later, their first child, Elizabeth Hamilton, was born. Their second child, Agnes, was also born in Scotland in 1849. At the end of 1850, Robert's mentor, his uncle, Boyd Gilmore, had signed on with the Hudson's Bay Company to exploit a coal finding on the northeast coast of Vancouver Island at Fort Rupert, near present-day Port Hardy. Yet, some of the people who were originally going to travel with Boyd Gilmore to Vancouver dropped out as they were told of the rough traveling conditions. Robert Gilmore put out the word that he was looking for replacements for his party, and at the last moment, Robert Dunsmuir signed on for this opportunity, with his wife in tow. With just 24 hours' notice, Robert Dunsmuir, his pregnant wife Joan, and their two very small children decided to leave their life and family in Scotland, everything they had ever known, to adventure to Canada. They set sail on the Pekin for Fort Vancouver via Cape Horn on December 19, 1850. It took 191 days for them to arrive. 8 days after arrival, on July 8, 1851, Joan Dunsmuir gave birth to their third child, James Dunsmuir, named after Robert's grandfather. Robert worked for the Vancouver Coal Company until he eventually founded and started his own coal company near Wellington, British Columbia, soon making him one of the richest men in Canada. You see, Robert applied to the British Columbia government in November 1869 for a coal license. While it was a slow start for Robert's coal mining business, he eventually did turn a profit, becoming one of the largest producing mines in British Columbia by 1878. His coal business was called R. Dunsmuir & Sons and was doing so well that at one point he was nearly making $500,000 per year. With his wealth, Robert Dunsmuir in 1887 decided that he was going to build Dunsmuir Castle, and he did not spare any expense to ensure that it was the most opulent private residence in Western Canada. The castle was 25,000 square feet and was built as a mirror of a castle from Robert's beloved Scotland. The castle had 4 floors, 39 rooms, and 8 fireplaces, and was built using the finest materials including granite, marble, sandstone, and it had a magnificent oak staircase that had been imported from Chicago. However, sadly, Robert Dunsmuir would never get a chance to live in and experience the beauty and the opulence of the castle that he had envisioned and dreamed of. Robert died 17 months before construction was completed, and this actually led to a string of deaths that followed the family. The original architect, Warren Haywood Williams, also died following the passing of Robert Dunsmuir. You see, after a severe cold that led to a coma, Robert Dunsmuir unexpectedly passed away on April 12, 1889, from what the death certificate described as a uric acid poisoning. His funeral was estimated to have been attended by 12,000 people, which followed with a procession from Fairview to St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church and the Rose Bay Cemetery. With Robert Dunsmuir gone and the castle only halfway finished, the Dunsmuir boys, Alexander and James, took it upon themselves to see their father's dreams completed. Robert Dunsmuir's death in 1889 caused a lot of conflict within the Dunsmuir family. You see, Robert had always promised his businesses to his 2 sons, James and Alexander, who had always worked in the family business for many, many years. However, upon reading Robert Dunsmuir's will, he had left everything to his wife, Joan. A lengthy battle began over the ownership of the company that Robert had built from the ground up. Yet, in another twist of tragic fate, the eldest son, Alexander Dunsmuir, died just 1 year later in 1900, while he was on his very own honeymoon. Alex's death pitted Joan and her son James against each other. Mother and son were against each other for control over Alex's portion as well. 38 years later, after arriving in the colony of Vancouver Island, Robert Dunsmuir ended up dying the richest man in British Columbia, estimated to be worth $15 million at the time, which today would be equal to about $489 million. Robert Dunsmuir's obituary in the Vancouver News Advertiser said of him that he was neither a politician nor statesman, as judged by the unusual standards applied to such, but was a very practical, hard-headed, and level-headed legislator who knew what he wanted and usually took the shortest route to its accomplishment. When Robert's will was read, it was discovered that Robert had left his entire business and his house, Dunsmuir Castle, to his wife, Joan Dunsmuir. And this caused a tremendous rift between Joan and her 2 sons, Alexander and James. And this disagreement eventually ended up in court, which at the time reflected badly on James Dunsmuir, who was the Premier of British Columbia. This caused a tremendous rift between James and his mother, and James never spoke to his mother again. And then in 1908, Joan Dunsmuir died, and after a lot of indecision, James did eventually attend his mother's funeral. With Joan's death in 1908, she left the castle to her children, who had neither the financial means to keep the castle going, and slowly it began to fall into neglect and disrepair, until it was eventually sold to a local investor for only $38,000. The building changed hands several times and eventually ended up serving as a military hospital, a college, offices, and a conservatory before it was repurposed into a historical museum in 1979. Today, Dunsmuir Castle is labeled as a National Historic Site of Canada and welcomes thousands of visitors every year, and is also used as a filming locations for such movies as The Boys, The Changeling, Final Destination, and my personal favorite, Little Women. Visitors to Craigdarroch Castle report spine-tingling encounters with apparitions, mysterious footsteps echoing in the empty corridors, and the flickering of lights that defy explanation. The ghostly figure of a woman, believed to be the spirit of Joan Dunsmuir, is said to be wandering the grand staircase, with her sad presence leaving a chill in the air. Many brave souls have dared to explore the shadowy corners of the castle, speaking of unexplained cold drafts, objects moving on their own, and the feelings of someone watching them. The ballroom, which was once filled with music and laughter, now echoes with ghostly whispers and spectral echoes of airy reminders of the past, when the ballroom would have been filled with the elite and the wealthy members of society. The tragic history of the Dunsmuir family, intertwined with the many spooky happenings of the Craigdarroch Castle, has cemented its reputation as one of the most haunted locations in Canada and in British Columbia. Those who venture into the haunted castle are cautioned to be aware of the restless spirits that dwell there. Despite the castle's official stance of denying any haunting activity, the ghostly stories persist, passed down from generation to generation. The apparition of a little girl, the image of a maid, and the phantom sounds of the music continue to intrigue and terrify those who visit this historic site. Whether you believe in the supernatural or not, one thing is for sure: Craigdarroch Castle holds many haunted secrets. It is one of those places that every person must visit and experience for themselves. Thank you to everyone for listening to Haunted Canada and for your continued support and encouragement. If you have enjoyed this episode and want to continue to hear more, please download the podcast, share, give it a like, and tell a friend. You can also join the Facebook group Haunted Canada Podcast and get all the updates by visiting our website, hauntedcanada.com. Thank you to everyone for listening to Haunted Canada and for your continued support and encouragement. If you have enjoyed the episode and want to continue to hear more, please download the podcast, give it a like, share it, and tell a friend. You can also join the Facebook group Haunted Canada Podcast and also check our website hauntedcanada.com for all updates. Also, please take the time to leave a positive review and a 5-star review. If you have any ghost stories, hauntings, unsolved murders, or cold cases that you would like us to cover on Haunted Canada, please email us through our website, hauntedcanada.com. And if you're ever in Edmonton, Alberta, check out my ghost tours, edmontonghosttours.com. I will give you a heads up that the tours only operate from July to about mid-November, depending on weather, of course. We do offer a variety of tours, including ghost tours, cemetery tours, haunted pub tours, and a university ghost tour as well. So if you'd like to check out any of those tours, visit our website, edmontonghosttours.com. Again, thank you to everyone for your support and for listening. I truly do appreciate it. Stay safe, everyone.